Welcome to the NAP Exam Prep Podcast, a focused 6-week series designed to support those preparing for the National Association of Parliamentarians exam. I'm Dr. Lisa Burton, and each week we'll break down key governance concepts, procedures, and foundational knowledge you will need to approach the exam with clarity and confidence. This podcast is educational, intentional, and time-bound, created to help you study smarter, understand the why behind the rules, and strengthen your overall governance knowledge. Whether you're testing for the first time or refreshing your understanding, you're in the right place. So let's get started. This is episode 2 of this podcast, and we are looking at chapters 3 and 4. A few reminders. The information presented is based on Robert's Rules of Order in brief, edition 3. If you see a blue gavel, it may be important to the NAP exam, and there will be a quiz in the description box below the video. My disclaimer is listed here. Please know that this series is not an official publication of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, nor is it endorsed by the National Association of Parliamentarians or any governing body. So this week, we're going to keep the main thing the main thing. Motions are made to introduce items to the membership for the consideration and to make a recommendation to act upon it. It is a call to action, a request to do something, a request to vote, a request to change something. You are basically saying, I think we should consider doing this. Typically, this is how the motion process goes. A member of the group proposes a motion. They stand and say, I move that. Motions require that a second member of a group agrees to consider the proposal, and so they will stand and say, I second. Now, to be clear, it doesn't mean you're in support. You just want to entertain the conversation about the motion. Without a second, the motion will die. And then once the group has a chance to speak in favor or against the motion, the chair will lead in a vote. Please remember the important words. You want to say, I move that. So who controls the motion? After the motion has been made, and before, and this is very important, before it has been stated by the chair, the maker of the motion still has control of it. It is still the makers of the motion. They can modify, withdraw at will. And this is before it is stated by the chair. Also, before it's stated by the chair, any member can quickly rise and with little or no explanation, informally suggest one or more modifications in the wording. But the maker of the motion still has control and can accept or reject the modification. So this is before the chair restates the motion. The maker of the motion still has control of it. Now, after the motion, or you might call it a question, has been stated by the chair, this assembly, so basically the group, not the maker, now has control of the motion. The maker can request unanimous consent to modify the wording, but if anybody objects, the change or modification, it now must be introduced in the form of a motion to amend. So once it's been stated by the chair, the group or the assembly now has control over what happens to the motion. So the perfection of a main motion, and we'll talk about different types of motions a little bit. Since a main motion can only be made when nothing else is pending. It starts the process of creating a new question, meaning it's the original, or it can be related to previous business or procedure, which is called being incidental. So to get actions done, we need a main or an original motion. Now, there are several ways that you can change or perfect a main motion to make sure you're getting the correct action that you want. So before it's been stated by the chair, another member can quickly ask the maker of the motion to modify it, and the maker can then agree. But once it's been stated by the chair, it is under the control of the assembly, and the assembly can now decide how can we perfect this motion. You can perfect it by amending it by unanimous consent. You can amend by the motion to amend, and we'll talk about all these. You can then refer it to a committee to get the motion correct a little bit more. And then you may go into debate and suggest that if this main motion is rejected, they will make a new motion that can be briefly described. So there are certain ways that you can make sure your call to action is correct and it can be followed. And for your main motions made by the individual, usually you do need a second. And the second says it's important to discuss. It doesn't always mean that you agree. You just want to put the motion on the floor before the body so that everybody has some thoughts. And usually the second, you don't have to write down who created or made the second, but it's always good to have for the record. Now, motions from a committee. Since a committee consists of more than one person, a second is implied. So if a committee recommends adoption of a motion, then it's clear a majority of that committee believe that the motion should be discussed. So you have multiple people talking about a motion. Therefore, according to Robert's Rules of Order, a second is not required. So the person who stands representing the committee will say, the committee recommends adoption and we do so move. So if it's from a committee, the committee recommends adoption and we do so move. So it's coming from a group. Now, for motions, the permission to withdraw can only be done by the person who supplied the original motion. So sometimes during debate, certain things are brought to light that this motion may not be valid, and they can desire to retract what is present. Now, once it belongs to the group after the second, the mover can withdraw as follows without a vote. So the chair will ask if anyone objects. Let's say the mover says, I would like to withdraw my motion. If no one objects, it's withdrawn. If there is a single objection to the maker of the motion withdrawing it, you must vote. Now, after the motion is on the floor, whether it's from a committee or an individual, you then go into debate. And then once you're in discussion or debate, the individual, even the committee, no longer has ownership of the motion. Once it's on the floor, any further changes or withdrawal of the motion must be done by the consensus of the body. Now, discussion etiquette, which is very important. Any limits to discussion, which includes time, the number of times an individual can speak, total duration, should be defined in advance and agreed upon by the group. The motion to limit debate can be in order, but can often be construed as directed at specific members. It is always the duty of the chair to ensure discussion is orderly and relevant. We call that being germane. And individuals must be recognized by the chair before speaking and make sure discussion is directly related to the motion and its merits. And we'll talk about different types of motions, but some motions do not allow discussion. As far as going further into discussion etiquette, it is good, and this is important for if you're chairing a meeting, it is good to alternate pros and cons. So somebody should speak in favor, and then the next person should speak against. It helps limit unnecessary discussion. If everybody agrees with the motion, you don't need to hear everybody. So alternating pros and cons basically is good discussion etiquette. It is good for members to wait to speak a second time until all other interested members speak first. So once you have spoke once on the motion, give others a chance to speak on the motion. And most importantly, during the debate or discussion, you should always direct your remarks towards the chair and not other members. And this reduces assumption of direct attacks. So in our discussion, we will always say, Madam Chair, not speaking to the person who's at mic 10. Now, to limit debate, we all have a right to have a discussion in a meeting. That's a healthy part of a meeting. However, we must balance the rights of the group. Therefore, this requires a larger vote, 2/3, and this is in limiting debate. You usually do this in advance when you accept the rules. Various limits can be set, but the motion must be very specific. You want to limit the total number of times the individual speaks or for how long each person speaks. You also want to limit the total time for discussion on a particular topic. Since specifics are outlined, you can amend this limiting debate. So you don't want to spend a long time on a topic, but you want debate to happen so that everybody can hear all points of views and they know how they want to vote. Now, this is also a motion. I know a lot of people, this is their favorite. Call the question. It is the purpose is to end debate and call for a vote. So someone will rise and say, I call the question, or I move the previous question, is how this motion can come about. So what has to happen? The chair will ask, are you ready for the question, or is there any further debate? And this would be in order, as this would officially end debate. Groups should allow a reasonable amount of time for discussion before this motion is called. Don't call it out in the middle of session. You must rise and be usually recognized formally by the chair. And you got to remember to call the question, you're going to have to vote to end debate. So sometimes it's best to let debate happen or watch the time and say, if there's a minute left, why call the question? So make sure you're paying attention to time when you decide to rise and say, I moved the previous question. So just as a review so far of our process of a motion, once it's on the floor, the chair will state the motion. It is moved and seconded that. Then discussion will happen. If debatable, every member has the right to debate. Another important thing, the chair refrains from debate while presiding. The proposer of the motion has the first right of debate. Everything that is talked about should be germane only to that specific motion. And once discussion is done, the chair will say, if there's no further discussion, The question is on the adoption of the motion that, and they restate the entire motion. And once the chair has recognized there's no further discussion, he or she will call for the vote. A member can call the question. However, make sure it's in order and should only be called if discussion has fully ended. Please don't use it to way of limiting debate. Now, once the chair has basically called or asked to end the question, the chair must state if a motion passes or fails. So we will talk about the voting process in a whole nother chapter. We'll talk about certain motions do require majority. And we talked a little bit about majority in chapters 1 and 2. Or you can have supermajority, which we consider 2/3. An example of that is suspending the rules. But for a motion, either the yeas have it or the nays have it, the chair must let the assembly know what happened with the motion. And we'll kind of run through a little script of a motion from start to finish in a moment. So, making and handling motions according to Robert's rules, and you can actually find this in the 3rd edition. So this is what happens. A member rises and addresses the chairperson by saying, "Madam Chair." The chair recognizes the member by saying, "The chair recognizes Susie Q." Susie Q will make her motion. I move to change the colors from green to purple. Another member will stand in second. The chair will state the motion. It is moved and seconded to change the colors from green to purple. There is debate, and the chair recognizes the need to speak to the motion, whether in favor or the chair says, "I recognize the need to speak in opposition." The chairperson puts the question and the members to the vote. The chair will say, all those in favor of changing the colors from green to purple will say yes, and those opposed will say no. And then the chairperson announces the result of the vote. The yeas have it, and the motion carries and restates what will happen. If you have any questions, you can put them in the description box, or you can send me an email at ljbforphylacter@gmail.com. So I'm going to ask you a few questions just to kind of wrap up certain things. So let's look at a few questions here that talked about a main motion. Which of the following main motions would be in order? And it could be more than one. So number 1 says, I move that we do not sponsor a float in Thanksgiving Day parade. 2, I move that we vote by a show of hands instead of wasting time on a ballot vote, as stated in the bylaws for this position because there is only one candidate. 3, as we never seem to have badges for everyone, I move that we rescind that standing rule. 4 says, although we have donated to the scholarship fund every year, I move that we do not make a donation this year. 5 says, I move that our unit go on record as opposing the new dues increase from nationals and write a letter to the president saying that. And 6, I move that we continue to hold our annual raffle as described in our bylaws. So which of the following main motions would be in order? And it can be more than one. And our smiley faces say that numbers 3, 4, and 5 are in order. Now the others, if you have questions of why they're not in order, you can send me an email at ljbforphylacter@gmail.com. Next question. Which of the following are main motions? We're talking about main motions. They're original motions, and it can be more than one. A says, I move to amend the motion by adding not to exceed 400. B, I move to purchase a Dell computer at a cost not to exceed 700. C, I move to establish a free lunch program through August of this year. D, I move to donate 200 to the Boys and Girls Club. E, I move to refer the motion to a committee of 5 to report at the next meeting. F, I move to ratify the decision made by the board to meet virtually. G says, I move to recess for 10 minutes so I can talk to another member about this motion before we vote on it. So which of the following, A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, are main motions? And it can be more than one choice. The correct answers are B, C, D, and F. These are all main motions, meaning they are the original motion. They're not trying to amend or refer or recessing. They are main motions. So in the next following questions, you are the organization's parliamentarian, and you are asked by the presiding officer of the assembly to provide some advice. And you got to remember, that's what parliamentarians are usually there for, to give advice. So when you are asked, you're going to give an answer of yes or no as appropriate. So looking at the scenario, and this is based on the scenario, not what you have experienced in your own meetings, based on what the scenario says. So Darla proposes the following. I move that we hold a 4th of July picnic this coming year. Someone says second. Immediately, Shanti asked Darla if she would be willing to include in the proposal the actual date of the picnic will be on Saturday following the 4th, rather the 4th itself, since so many people have family obligations on the holiday. Darla agrees and asks if this will require a formal amendment to accomplish. The presiding officer turns to you, because you are the parliamentarian, and asks whether an amendment to be approved by the assembly will be needed at this time. What is your response? Yes or no? So it is based on this scenario. And you can always pause, take a moment, and think about what we have talked about. The answer is no. Since the motion was not yet stated by the chair, Darla can still modify it. It belongs to the assembly only after it is stated by the chair. So Darla stated her motion, someone did second, but before the chair could say something, someone stood up and said, would you mind changing it? So Darla still had control of her motion. So she was able to do what was requested. Next, you are still a parliamentarian, and it's based on the scenario, not your experience. Zeta Fraternity has always had a hazing event conducted by the initiation committee. This is just a scenario. This is not real. Ahmad moves that the initiation committee will not conduct the hazing event this year. The presiding officer asks you if this motion is in order. Your response. The answer is yes. Although the motion has the effect of not doing something, it would change something that has been done in the past. Another example, you are still a parliamentarian. A main motion is pending to publicize in the local media that April will be Parliamentarian Law Month. During the discussion, there's a lot of enthusiasm about such an issue, and Debbie proposes what she thinks is a great idea and presents it as a main motion. I move that our organization purchase a 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, and donate to the local library with a nameplate indicating that it was donated by our group in honor of Parliamentary Law Month. The presiding officer asks you if there's any problem with introducing this as a main motion. So make sure you look at the whole scenario. There's a main motion pending, but during the discussion, Debbie presents another idea as a main motion. So what would your response be? The answer is yes. The motion is not in order because a main motion is already pending. The chair could process this as an amendment to the main motion by saying, does the member wish to amend the pending motion? If Debbie does not wish to amend, she could wait until the main motion is disposed of, and then she could make this motion as a main motion. Another scenario, you're still the parliamentarian. The Community Boosters Club is currently considering a motion to send a bouquet of flowers from the organization to the mayor, who is in the hospital. During debate, some members expressed the view that the local mayor can be rather divisive and a challenging person, and they don't want to send him flowers. One member asked the presiding officer if the motion might require a 2/3 vote, since it takes away members' rights to use their treasury money in a way that is appreciated by everyone. The presiding officer asks you if this motion does in fact require a 2/3 vote. And the answer is no. It is a main motion, and thus it requires only a majority to adopt. It is the responsibility of those who are opposed to the motion to try to convince the others that the correctness of their position. So main motions usually require the majority. And I believe this is our last question. The Cyclist Forum of Happy Town has just learned that the city is planning to build a new bicycle path in their downtown area. Cheryl moves that the forum supports this initiative. If several people shout second, Vernon is recognized. He says supporting the idea is fine, but we should send a letter to the mayor and city council saying that we support it. Would Cheryl agree to add this to her motion? Should the chair allow Cheryl to modify her motion? You can choose more than one answer if you wish, but make sure you pay attention to what has happened in this scenario. So you can say, no, this is a friendly amendment and Robert's Rules of Order does not allow this. B, no, this friendly amendment will require unanimous consent to be adopted, so the chair must ask if there's an objection to this addition. Yes, since the chair has not stated the main motion, this kind of modification is fine, as long as Cheryl agrees with it. D, yes, any suggestion that makes the main motion more meaningful would be in order as long as Cheryl agrees with it. So make sure you read correctly of what happened in this specific scenario, not what you have experienced. And the correct answer, you probably saw it when I changed over. The answer is C. Only answer for this one is C. Yes, since the chair has not stated the main motion, this kind of modification is fine as long as Cheryl agrees with it. So we have reached the end. The next steps for this week are to review your parliamentary terms and procedures covered today. So looking at the study guide, defining any terms that I have given you. You may want to practice recognizing when procedures are used correctly. Focus on understanding purpose, not memorization. Being able to apply These practices is better than memorizing just to pass an exam. You need to apply them. So remember, parliamentary procedure supports order and fairness. The exam tests understanding, not speed. And progress matters more than perfection. Please trust the process. So before you go, this wraps up today's episode of the NAP Exam Podcast. Remember, this is a 6-week limited series, so be sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. And thank you for spending this time investing in your preparation and your leadership and growth. And until next time, study with purpose and stay encouraged.